Not a bad song from Strider. Welcome back to another chapter of Mortal Kombat Return of the Dragon King. Last time, in continuation 1, we just noticed Kung Lao in his astral form, who went back in time to 1964 from the current time that he was in, and he thought he was dead, but really he wasn't when he found out about that date. And he was just following Shujinko around the Earthrealm Oriental Village, and he spotted Boraicho, his former master, which wasn't his drunken self, actually. And this was the start of Deception's conquest mode. Eventually, Kung Lao followed Shujinko to the Linkway Temple, where he found the Earthrealm Kamidogu in a tunnel before the Red Dragon should get to it, and he soon found the ancient portal leading to the Nexus, and Kung Lao was about to follow him until he was interrupted by Raiden, also in his astral form, and apparently they seem to be in their subconscious minds, and they must find Shujinko to put a stop to the Dragon King, Onaga. So eventually Kung Lao woke up in the Jinsei chamber in the Sky Temple with Fujin watching over him, who just sent a portal into Edenia so that hopefully Kung Lao and Liu Kang could find the answers regarding the Dragon King from Queen Sindel. And Raiden is really in a weakened state. So, let's get it going. Alright, continuation 2. Onaga's plot. Kung Lao walked through the gusty neon blue portal. He actually slapped into the midst of the Outworld frontier, just a few miles away from the royal establishment, with some portions of the exterior gleaming like beacons amongst the fuchsia macabre. The sudden air felt as if it went through the former monk's body, as transparent as Liu's spirit. He even could have sworn some very light frost littering the terrain, with tiny flakes falling and glistening while being tossed by the frigid wind. All of a sudden, Kung Lao felt a warming sensation from within himself, his dark clothing absorbing and containing it. He looked at himself with the comforting ardency, as if reading his mind like Kenshi, the champion spirit, was able to keep him cozy amongst the bitter cold of an early winter. The Oriental warrior thanked him, even though he was a tad envious, wishing he'd do the same if he would possess Liu's abilities. Before he ridiculed Liu, suggesting unpossessing his body once more, Lao spotted some Onis in his peripheral vision, closing fast. His kicks, punches, and hat tosses were precise and swift, but each lunge seemed to leave a residue of thin smoke. Inspired by this, Kung Lao utilized his signature tornado kicks, which burned a nearby enemy caught in his wake. Vulnerable, the White Lotus veteran sliced through them like thin paper, finishing the small horde and spewing their scorching guts. There must be stragglers loyal to Onaga! I must be on my guard! Still, Liu's fiery essence remained constant inside him as he hurriedly continued his trek. Anxious, he figured his chance was to reach the safe haven before the ominous Onaga should find him as one of his untameable preys. Speaking of Shinnok, he found himself in another wave. This time he was ready as he made more quicker maneuvers, including his hat tosses, using his tornado skills to incinerate and teleporting to some unsuspecting Onis, even decapitating them with a direct throw and rebounds. After wandering a few feet in the disquietude, he eventually made out a wandering, shadowy figure. I shouldn't have repeated that word. His eyes couldn't make out the roamer as to whether or not he was another messenger to his greatest adversary. He then made a sharp fighting stance. "Wait, he's not after you." Lao hesitated as he made out the likely specter some more, surprising the humble monk since he would usually pounce on him without relent. Breaking the mounting tension, Lao stepped forward and declared with a spat, "Hey you! Follower of Onaga! Face me in combat!" The silhouette stopped and turned, following the familiar sharp tone. Kung Lao! It was now distinguishably noticeable by the sight of his face and opaque wasp-colored garb. Hanzo! He trotted towards him, worried he could just be his usual wraith self. The rover raised a hand. "Fear not. I haven't been consumed by my demonic self. At least not yet." "That can't be. How is it you're still alive?" A flash of that instant when he lost to his wraith self, before storming and losing to Quan Chi, then being tossed and torn asunder by the tornado, entered his agog mind. "After I lost my sanity by seeing my nemesis, then perishing, the elder gods blessed me as their champion. I rested within the heavens. Alas, I never saw my family there, though they granted me on a task to stop a man named Shijinko." Shijinko? Lao never heard of this name before, other than his spiritual odyssey. Not even the other monks had that name. "Yes, I first met him in the Netherrealm and trained him to learn my skills as a wraith. Before I took my vengeance in the first tournament, I wound up in the Nexus, where all the Kamidogo were laid upon the altar, and I was tasked to kill the same frail man I met all those years ago. Unfortunately, he bested me in battle, and I was unable to prevent him on awakening the Dragon King. I shall make that fake champion pay for his life." Before his body should ignite while succumbing to his cursed self, Kung Lao warned that Onaga is roaming freely in Outworld, and he must warn the Edenians of the oncoming threat. "Onaga is in Outworld?" "Well, in any case, it would seem I have a debt to repay." "What of the Deadly Alliance?" "They've been defeated, Hanzo. Nightwolf and I finished them." "But, and of Liu Kang's spirit?" "I'm still here," he said. He took out the amulet. "Onaga is at large. We must watch out, Kung Lao. His corruptive influence infects the dead, bringing them to life as heralds in his conquest. We must be wary of any hostiles. There should be more than those petty Onis. I will accompany you. We shall prepare Edenia and all realms for the worst. You and Liu Kang are still the current champions of Earthrealm. We need to gather recruits from the other live realms. Onaga and Shijinko must be stopped at all costs. All existence depends on it." Lao and Hanzo bowed to each other honorably before they resumed their journey to Edenia. Several minutes later, the proud palace stood over the steep basaltic hills, and Hanzo's aid was very helpful when clobbering the Onis and other outworld creatures. They finally came across the armored guards who were on high alert, crossing their hook swords in front of them and denying them access. "Halt! Who goes there?" We are from Earthrealm. We wish no harm unto you. Hanzo and I had not been tainted." "Is that so? We in the Royal Guard must remain vigilant. We've been hearing rumors of the Dragon King's second coming, and he and his followers and he and his followers would be marching onto our peaceful territory as we speak. Sindel has been in constant worry for her daughter. How can we be certain you two aren't any of Onaga's many vile followers? Kung Lao and Hanzo's tongues had been tied. Because they are champions of the realms, a gruffy voice answered before the bystanders heard footsteps of what a megaton beast could have been. The two knights faced their oncoming greeter, who stuck out 4 hands clutching the door sides before emerging. Kung Lao! Lao looked aloft as stupefied as ever. Goro? Relax, minions. He's on our side, as noble as ever, much like your great predecessor. Lao took off his hat as he bowed slowly and loud to the Shao Kahn prince, bestowing him with deep respect. Then they shall pass. The 2 guardsmen yielded, and he allowed them through. So Goro knows Kung Lao. Ever since that peace treaty, Goro addressed the rumors were true, after all, concerning Onaga when he heard the news from the weary travelers, and Shiva, his lover, greeted them. The Shao Kahn monarch urged them to meet up with Queen Sindel. Both of the 4-armed beasties led them to the Indigo throne room. Jade and Asgard stood beside her. The champion made a kneel, addressing the majesty of Edenia. Kung Lao, we welcome your presence, and Hanzo's as well. Of course, your majesty. We have noticed you're 2 of the survivors that incident in Outworld. What of my daughter? Fushin's words entered his mind. Only 9 combatants survived the ordeal, while others weren't so lucky. So, the gossip has rung true after all. Onaga's reign has begun once more, and I fear Katana may not be her normal self. Indeed, Onaga has a tendency to reanimate dead followers. I should know, as I was reborn once as a vengeful wraith myself. So you have, Hanzo. I acknowledge this, since Shao Kahn was Onaga's most trusted and powerful advisor. Before he reigned in Outworld and conquered Edenia, he once served under him. Shao Kahn? He performed duties for Onaga? Lao was flabbergasted, as was Liu. Yes, Onaga promoted him as his most prominent servant.
Right.
Sorry that I ran out of time, guys. So, where were we? Oh yeah. Yes, Onaga promoted him as his most prominent servant. Wait. Yes, Onaga promoted him as his most prominent servant. It was said that he and Khan both share such astonishing feats, both an immense strength and the talents to wield soul magic. However, their armies were different. The Dragon King conjures his own under his thrall, corrupting their bodies and souls, while Shao Kahn relies more on lively soldiers, teaching them his ways of the black arts. Shang Tsung! So both conquerors have the unique ways on ruling Outworld. Alright, who says that? Sindel? I guess. Yes, but since their methods of reigning terror has not been absolute, there was a quarrel between them. Their methods of power clashed with one another. The conqueror's standards never met Onaga's terms, and Khan was quickly growing weary to the point on dominating the land for himself. The armies were at a standoff. He knew there'd be a draw if he were to challenge Onaga in combat, until the Right Emperor poisoned the Dragon King. Without their ruler, the feeble undead army perished within minutes of Khan's bloodthirsty rule in establishing his own title. Kung Lao listened attentively as he sat on the circular floor. He was still astonished how Sindel and Goro knew so much, just by being under Khan's unstoppable tyranny for several thousand years. which can rival any mortal on Earth. After he processed the intel, he spoke. What is it that Onaga desires? To reign supreme in Outworld? Yes, and in the other realms, if he does find ancient relics known as the Kamidogu. The Kamidogu? I saw Raiden and I that Shijinko obtained the Earthrealm piece. Shijinko? I hadn't seen him since before Khan's invasion. You know of him, Queen Sindel? Indeed. If I'm correct, Onaga must have possessed all but one of the Kamidogu. Our flight means nothing if we remain alone. I believe I know what the final piece is, and we need to create a distraction to prevent Onaga and his undead followers on reaching it. We must join forces with the champions from the other realms. I will attend your cause as a former warrior of Outworld. Shiva laid a slim hand on him. I appreciate the offer, but I'm afraid that you need to hold the fort. Lao has Scorpion to accompany him until all the champions from other realms had been found. Hanzo, please. Wait! Lao took out the golden dragon amulet. Liu's voice cracked with upset. What is it? What is it? I need to stay with the Edenians. It's Katana. I feel something is wrong. If you are visiting other realms, I need to stay here. Onaga must have perverted her, and I must save her. I understand your desperation. I too will look for answers to save my good friend. I'm certain Sindel's anxious as well. We may need to start looking at the lost tomb. We have cleaned out the place, but the large sarcophagus still remains. Now there it is. I believe it is Onaga's. Brother, I must stay with them, please. He hesitated for a brief moment, then he sighed. All right, you could go on without me. I understand your anxiety over Katana's well-being. Thank you, brother. I knew you'd be considerate. Fend yourself well, and you can wait for my return. He handed over the amulet to Jade. Sindel declared that they'll leave Edenia en route to Outworld in daybreak with several esteemed knights in tow, while Asgarth, Goro, and Shiva stayed on guard. One other thing. It's most likely my daughter may be under Onaga's thrall, and if we should encounter any of them, I'll protect you, Sindel, and try and release her from the spell. Kung Lao and I had done this before. You can count on it. Moments after a quick respite, Kung Lao and Hanzo resumed their search for other champions willing enough to fight off the Dragon King. However, as soon as the couple warriors were about to exit the palace, the form of one collapsed and reduced to unconsciousness, unable to retrieve the bystanders' calls. Oh, man. Within Liu Kang's new tomb, Aiko grew irritated, pacing around as she wondered of Lao's fate in Outworld. She felt something was amiss, like a random unfortunate incident which involved her mutual other in that dangerous frontier. All of a sudden her eyes squinted, and her head ached as an abrupt neon light granted her, which soon turned out to be a portal as her vision made it out. A figure walked through, wearing a ribbon of sorts, as streams were seen hanging from behind the head of the shadowy figure. She soon registered it was the blind telekinetic. Kenshi! He still wore that dissonant look, despite the blinding light of the rip. Aiko, something has happened in Outworld. I can feel anxiety, and I'm sure it is emanating from there. Outworld? Is it Onaga? I'm not sure, but my instincts drove me out of the Shiraryu headquarters. I sense something doesn't feel right, as my mind lost focus while mourning for Hanzo. Aiko paused. Kung Lao, I can feel something awful has happened to him. But I'm sure he's still alive. She took out her crimson gem and stated this was the same one she gifted to the Shaolin before his fateful fight against the Deadly Alliance. Kenshi grew intrigued by the sight of it. This must be a jewel forged by your concentrated energy. You're not only just a rare specimen that can manipulate the heart, but also forge jewels with those same abilities. You truly are a special case indeed. That made her blush a little. She looked at her precious gems still shining with her stored vitality. I don't think Kung Lao has perished. I would have felt something like chest pain, or the gem might grow dark. I've still yet to come to terms with this and my powers. Indeed. However, there's been an incident in Outworld. Good thing I'm capable of developing portals, as I'm a member of the Outworld Investigation Agency. Aiko nodded. Come, we must hurry. She was feeling the OCD pangs from the both of them, and it was certainly better than being under tension and wired feelings while being cooped up at the academy. They entered the portal and, to their surprise, wound up at Kenshi's altered coordinates at the shambles of Shang Tsung's former palace. The young warrior was paralyzed as if by radiant shocks. Oh no! The palace has been destroyed! It's in shambles! Wait! It sure is quiet. I sense no loss of life here. My mind, it's scanning that no one seems to be buried within the rubble, nor any bodies being incinerated. There's no odor of ash nor brimstone. However, I could pick up a disturbing presence. Onaga! A vision of the ominous dragon interfered Kenshi's mind, as did Aiko's. No! Foul work for certain. My colleagues should be out there, as be Kung Lao. They must be out and about. I can still feel a faint trace of them. Look out! Aiko screamed. Her body lurched as she was lifted by a neon green light surrounding it. Kenshi, picking up the energy surge, shot out a psychic blast, raising a hand to the blending intruder. Aiko dropped to the ground, landing on her bruised arse. Then they beheld a garbed ninja wearing a dark, blood-red outfit with black. To the cardiokinetic surprise, he was none other than Ermac! Her mind drifted to the conversation she heard from Kung Lao as he cleaned out the warrior's shrine. Basically, it's the hidden boss fight in Shaolin monks. So, it's hard to get, really. There's a lot of stunts involved. You could pause here if you want. I don't feel like reading this, but, yeah, basically it's one of those optional boss fights against Ermac. So, Liu Kang and Kung Lao, they worked together to wipe him out. 2 against 1, but he was proven as a formidable opponent. I hope he gets an MK12, especially as Gerard, if possible. So, Psychic Slam. From the post on a high edge, Ermac leapt onto the shambled site, facing the duo. After the subtle impact, being she's a glass cannon, Aiko tapped on her dragon icon twice, turning crimson armor into a lime green. She believed with that shade, she thought she'd be immune to Ermac's own soul kinesis. Nightwolf, both the expert in shamanistic and technological skills, had built the said armor in order for Aiko to enhance her combat prowess. Each set of armor had its own unique properties, depending on the shade, whereas crimson was her cardiokinesis, turquoise was cobalt armor, though the lime hue was still experimental. With her confidence restored and her new set of armor, she dashed into the fray with her bowstaff drawn. Kenshi managed to stun him inside his telekinetic field, before Aiko gave him a series of swift whacks. She just jumped and twirled, performing another strike, with Ermac's manipulation having no effect on her immune body. Nightwolf is indeed a genius, testing out the armor's resistance with his own empowered weapons. Although his soul blast did send Aiko and Kenshi back a few feet, the blind swordsman unleashed his telekinesis as Ermac attempted to drive it back, with his causing a sort of psychokinetic tug-of-war. Aiko stuck out a hand, utilizing her kinesis, stopping the assault. But he knew better, using her free hand, forcing her back once more. She hardly absorbed his energy, and it seemed almost infinite. Suddenly, Ermac was encased in a green energy field before he went through the ground, then through it emerging behind Aiko. Kenshi didn't have much time to react before she was punched directly. Aiko screeched before she was forced away, and Ermac refocused on the swordsman. The legion of raging souls knocked her out, and as her head began to swim, somehow she found herself in Jin's house as she observed the kid playing a frustrating 8-bit game. Realizing the endless looping, buzzing tune and the funky-looking trees, she knew it was the Legend of Kage. Thanks for pointing it out, angry video game nerd. It's one of those obscure gems that I forgot. She recalled it was one of the obscure gems her mind forgot so many years ago. Just the music and trees in the background brought her lost memory back to the forefront. However, since there were no continues, and being the difficulty involved instantaneous death and random, confusing enemy fire, the little tyke let out a scream of annoyance, nearly slamming the controller. The perception became fuzzy again, almost like it was fading, still stuck on the F key. The droning music triggered a strange lulling tune in her mind, a familiar one. A few notes repeated before continuing, and she found herself whistling those same keys. She even followed the entire piece, and they got Ermac's attention despite her being out of it. The assaulter faced her almost instantly with a heel turn until Kenshi hesitated before unleashing another psycho blast. Instead, something pricked both their minds, and the swordsman began to delve deeper into the raiding spirits within Ermac. The series of spirits seemed unhinged, swirling in a mysterious fighter, wanting to break free as if they'd been imprisoned. Then a malicious image developed, the face of a large pointed crown belonging to the former Emperor Shao Kahn. Kenshi raised his hand higher and curled as if he was clutching something. Somehow, this silenced the souls a tad as Ermac listened on Aiko's whistles, as if both things were calming. That she got deeper into the song. Her whistles became audible, releasing the enemy more, even when Kenshi was speaking into him to ease his souls. Suddenly, figments of a mother with long strands of white hair was caressing a baby girl and humming that same melody. Kenshi rose his long sword, igniting in a pink hue before it made a downward thrust in the air. In his mind, he sliced through some ominous chains. Ermac hunched over, heaving and holding his head, and his eyes broke through the green gleams, revealing amber irises. Kenshi rose a hand to repair any internal damage within Aiko's brain. He should have known, since she had a concussion. This quieted her whistling while the delirium faded, and he immediately tended her where Ermac faced the duo, no longer having a desire to attack. Kenshi! It was serene, and like a grown man's instead of being digitally altered. Ermac! Ermac! I am no longer. I'm starting to regain myself again, as the doomed ruler of Edenia. I am King Gerard. He continued to look at himself. Aiko and Kenshi were flabbergasted, even bringing her out of her daze. King Gerard. Sindel's husband? Katana's father? Shao Kahn. I heard he... Shh. I've become an abomination. Through his fusion of many dead denizens, the treacherous emperor shall not be forgiven. What better pawn could Khan have chosen than this? Kenshi walked over to the lost individual. He explained their predicament regarding the rebirth of the Dragon King as well as the independence of Edenia. Sherrod explained Kenshi broke his thrall. He remembered he was controlled by Khan, and he recognized the tune Aiko was whistling. From her delirium, Kenshi and Ermac healed her with their combined telepathy, and the latter noticed it was the song he and Sindel hummed for Katana as a lullaby, while Aiko confirmed it was only the song of healing. Now keep in mind, this is set before Majora's Mask, because this is the year 1995, so coincidence? And what of Onaga? We don't know yet, but we believe he can be close to the kingdom. Sherrod offered Kenshi and Aiko to hold on to him as he shall teleport toward the palace within the same lime field used for soul kinesis. It was so damn tough coming up with ideas for the combat scene between Ermac and Kenshi. It seemed essential to the plot of Deception as it finally symbolized the Soul Shifter's freedom from Khan's hold, and assisted against Onaga and his followers. I don't want to spoil too much yet. Also, the song that Aiko referred to, I had this idea for a while, ever since I kept seeing AVGN's review of The Legend of Kage, one of the obscure games that my mind forgot, aside from the vague trees and the droning noise within the ninja's fall. And Taito was certainly the czar of obscurity. It is indeed. I had this random idea with Jin playing and struggling with it from that too, even when Aiko's mind was in a void recalling that said song, which be significant later. From the fans' preferences, it was indeed a nice choice, having William Lee as Kung Lao. Very promising. And he won by a landslide on that poll, by the way. But I decided to change the cast a little bit. The same thing with Raiden, with Richard Epcar instead of, that guy in Shaolin Monks. The fight with Ermac was a tough one I had to find in Shaolin Monks. First, one of the monks must find a secret location, which I could only recall jumping high to a precipice west from large elaborate doors in the Wuxi Academy. Then use the wall swing ability till you hit a switch, which unlocks the warrior shrine. At a ninja at the far left stands Ermac, and I looked up the battle. I bet you need to be in a high level before combating him. Especially if you're alone. I bet. I figured having the champions of each realm defeating Onaga was a better choice. More of a hopeless situation into a fighting chance. Yeah, one comeback can defeat him, if it's not Sujinko. But again, I'm not a fan of him, and I think they'd have a better connection with the Kamidogu as well. And there are the songs for that. Had some other ideas too, but I needed to cut the chapters short. So, see you soon. Until then, this is the Ikron Writer signing out. And, yeah. I'll see you all later.